Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make apple Tarte Tatin. Now I've done a version of this in the past with a shortcake type pastry where I grated a short crust pastry onto the apples and cooked it. But more traditionally it's done with a puff pastry. So that's what I'm going to do today. It's not difficult and it doesn't really take too long, but it could be slightly messy because you have to cook the pastry on top of the apples and then you have to turn it upside down once it's been cooked. But I'll go on to the ingredients. And for this I have a sheet of puff pastry which is shop bought. Mine's an all butter one, which would be better if you can get an all butter one. And I've simply cut out of that a rough circle which is about 10 inches in diameter, because I'm going to use a 9-inch diameter pan for this. So that's the pastry, and I'm going to put that back into the fridge just to keep it chilled for the time being. And then I have here 5 Braeburn apples. You can use whatever apples you want, but I like Braeburn because they have a nice flavour and they keep their shape. And I've peeled them and cored them and cut them into quarters. I've actually tossed them in some lemon juice just to stop them from going brown while they've been sitting there. Now, you might need 5, you might need 6, you might need more. It depends on how you arrange your apples in the pan, basically. So you can, and how big the apples are, you can vary the amount, but I think 5 would be good enough for my purposes. I have 100 grams, which is about 7 tablespoons of unsalted butter. You could use salted butter, it wouldn't matter. And I'm going to put a pinch of salt into it anyway, so that would be fine. And that's 7 tablespoons, as I said. I have 100 grams, half a cup of caster sugar. Now I'm using a golden caster sugar simply because I have it and I wanted to get it used up. And then for some seasoning to go into the sugar, I have about 1 gram, quarter of a teaspoon of ground cardamom. And you can use any seasoning you want, or you can do it without seasoning. But I did consider cinnamon, and cinnamon goes very well with apple. But it seems almost everybody uses cinnamon, and I wanted something different. And cardamom has a lovely flavour, so that's what I'm going to use. But you can use whatever you want. So that's all the ingredients basically, and the first thing we need to do is to get our butter, sugar and apples into our pan, because we're going to caramelise those. So I'm going to put my butter in my pan like that, and I'm going to spread that over the base of the pan fairly evenly. And I'm doing it like this because it will serve another purpose. It will help me to lay the apples in place before I start to caramelise them. And you don't have to be too fussy about spreading it evenly, because once it goes onto the heat it's going to melt and it will automatically level off. So then I'm going to sprinkle over my sugar with the cardamom in. And that's good like that. So then I'm going to put my apples in, and the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to put them around the rim, slightly overlapping. And then I'm just going to arrange the remaining apples in the centre. So then with that like that, I need to caramelise the sugar and the butter. So I'm going to put that onto a medium to high heat, and I'm going to allow the sugar and the butter to caramelise until it starts to bubble and turn a sort of caramel colour, and that should take 8 to 10 minutes probably. So that's bubbling away nicely, and so we'll just leave that to begin to caramelise. And as the apple and sugar and butter are caramelising, I'm going to preheat my oven to 210 degrees Celsius, 190 Celsius with a fan, 410 Fahrenheit. That will be ready to take the Tarte Tatin once the pastry's on the top. So I have taken that off the heat now, and I let it bubble away for a good 10 minutes, and so that will have caramelised the sugar and the butter, and the next thing to do is to put our pastry on the top. But before I do that, I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of salt onto the caramel and the apples, and I'm just going to leave it for a few minutes so that it cools down just a little bit before I put the pastry on. So the final thing to do is to put our pastry on, and I've made a couple of slits in the top of the pastry as well, and that's to allow air to get out or vent out, and I'm going to tuck the edges down inside the pan where it overlaps. That's good like that. So then I'm going to put that into the oven, and I'm going to bake it for 35 to 40 minutes until it turns a nice golden brown colour. And once it's done that, I'll take it out of the oven, and I'm going to leave it for 5 minutes. Then I'll come back because we need to turn it out and cut it. I baked my Tarte Tatin for 35 minutes, and it coloured very well on the top, and the puff pastry puffed up. So I took it out of the oven, being very careful of course, because the handle of the pan is red hot, and in fact I've left a tea towel wrapped around the handle so that I'm not tempted to grab it without realising how hot it is. So this is what it looks like. As you can see, that pastry coloured quite nicely. So what I have to do is to tip that out upside down, and that can tend to be slightly messy, but I'm going to try to do it, and without making too much of a mess. I'm going to just put a plate on it like that and quickly turn it over, being careful not to burn myself, and then lift it off like that. And I have to say, I'm very impressed with how that came out of the pan intact like that. So that's still very, very hot, I'm going to leave it for a few minutes before I cut into it and have a taste. So it's been a while. I've let this cool down a little bit, and as I cut it and some of the juice leaked out, I brushed that back over on the top of the apples. So I've cut my slice and I've taken just a little bit of creme fraiche to taste with it. So I'll have a taste. Oh, that is very, very good. Can be served with ice cream or with cream, whipped cream, or with custard, or as I've done with some creme fraiche. But has that lovely appley taste, slightly tart from the apples as well, but also sweet from the caramel, and then that crispness of the pastry on the outside. The top, which was crisp, will soften as the juice from the apples seeps into it, but that's fine. So this is a very traditional French type recipe, Tarte Tatin, and very, very easy to make if you're using shop bought puff pastry. It takes longer if you're making your own puff pastry, of course, but if you're going to buy shop bought, try to buy the ones that have got butter in them, because they're better for this type of dessert. So that's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there'll be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.